Everything you've been told about how to win financially sounds right, until you realize it doesn't actually work. Work hard, earn more, save money, invest slowly. It sounds responsible, it sounds logical, it sounds safe. And that's exactly why it keeps so many people stuck. Because what sounds right isn't always what produces results. And once you understand how the system actually operates, you start to see why. You start to notice that the people who follow the correct path rarely break out. They progress, but they don't escape. They improve their situation, but they never gain control over it. They earn more, but they never feel like they have enough. And the reason for that isn't random. It's structural. Because the system was never designed to reward effort the way you were taught to believe. It rewards something else entirely. Position. Where you stand in relation to money, assets, and control. And until that shifts, nothing else really changes. You can increase your income. You can improve your habits. You can even become more disciplined than everyone around you. But if your position stays the same, the outcome eventually does too. That's why people can work for decades and still feel like they're chasing something just out of reach. Because they're solving the wrong problem. They think the issue is income, but income isn't the problem. Income is the tool, and most people use that tool in a way that keeps them exactly where they are. Every dollar that comes in gets assigned immediately. Rent, bills, lifestyle, obligations, and whatever is left, if anything is left, gets saved. But saving by itself doesn't change your position. It preserves it. It protects what you already have, but it doesn't move you forward in a meaningful way. And over time, inflation quietly reduces the value of what you've saved anyway. So even the safe strategy isn't really safe. It just feels safe. Because it doesn't challenge the system. It operates comfortably inside it. And that's the key distinction. There's a difference between surviving within a system and positioning yourself to benefit from it. Most people are taught how to survive. Very few are taught how to position. And that's where the real shift begins. Because once you start thinking in terms of position, everything changes. You stop asking how to earn more. You start asking where your money should go. You stop focusing on effort. You start focusing on structure. You stop measuring progress by income. You start measuring it by ownership. Because ownership is what changes your relationship with the system. If you rely entirely on income, you're tied to time. Your ability to earn is directly connected to your ability to work. And that connection creates a ceiling. There are only so many hours you can trade, only so much energy you can expend, only so long you can sustain that pace, and eventually, something gives. Either your time runs out, or your opportunities do. But ownership removes that limitation. Because when you own something that produces value, your output is no longer limited by your input. It becomes scalable. It becomes independent. It becomes something that continues whether you're actively working or not. And that's where the game starts to change. Because now you're not just participating in the system. You're extracting value from it. And that's the difference between being inside the system and being positioned within it. But this is also where most people hesitate. Because ownership requires a different way of thinking. It requires delayed gratification. It requires discipline. And most importantly, it requires a willingness to break away from what feels normal. Because the system constantly encourages the opposite. It rewards consumption. It promotes upgrades. It pushes the idea that success should be visible. Better car, better house, better lifestyle. And while those things feel like progress, they often create something else entirely: dependency. Because every upgrade increases your cost of living. Every new expense adds pressure. Every financial obligation ties you more tightly to your income. And over time, you don't just want your job, you need it. And that need removes your leverage. Because when you can't afford to step away, you can't negotiate. You can't take risks. You can't reposition yourself. You're locked in. And that's exactly where the system wants you. Predictable, reliable, dependent. But once you recognize that pattern, you can start to move differently. You can start to question every financial decision in terms of position. Does this move increase my control or reduce it? Does this expense create flexibility or remove it? Does this choice move me closer to ownership or further away from it? Because every decision compounds, not just financially, but structurally. It either strengthens your position or weakens it. And over time, those small decisions create completely different outcomes. This is where leverage becomes important, and not in the way it's usually explained. Leverage isn't just about borrowing money. It's about amplifying your position, using tools, systems, and structures to expand what you can control. Because on your own, your capacity is limited. But with leverage, that capacity increases. You can acquire more. You can scale faster. You can move further than you could through effort alone. And that's why the people who understand the system don't rely solely on their own resources. They use external resources strategically. They use capital, systems, and opportunities that extend beyond their immediate reach. And when done correctly, this creates a compounding effect. Because now your growth isn't linear. It accelerates. But this only works if what you're acquiring produces value. That's the distinction that matters. Because leverage applied to consumption creates pressure. But leverage applied to assets creates expansion. And understanding that difference is critical, because the same tool can either trap you or free you. It all depends on how it's used. This is why the idea of avoiding all debt is incomplete. It ignores the role debt plays in building position. Used incorrectly, it becomes a liability. Used strategically, it becomes a bridge. A way to access opportunities that would otherwise take years to reach. And time is one of the most valuable elements in this entire system. Because time determines how long your position has to grow. The earlier you acquire assets, the longer they have to compound. The longer they compound, the more they separate you from those who started later, or never started at all. And this is where patience becomes powerful. Because the system doesn't reward urgency. It rewards consistency. Small, repeated actions that build over time. Acquiring one asset, then another, then another. Allowing each one to contribute to your position. Allowing each one to reduce your dependence on income. And over time, something shifts. You no longer feel the same pressure. You no longer make decisions out of necessity. You begin to operate from a place of control. And that changes everything. Because when you're not forced into decisions, you make better ones. You take calculated risks. You pursue opportunities that align with your long-term position. You stop reacting and start directing. And that's what real financial progress looks like. Not just more money, but more control, more flexibility, more options. because options are what separate those who are stuck from those who aren't. The ability to walk away, the ability to wait, the ability to choose. And those abilities only exist when your position supports them. This is why the system doesn't need to stop you. It just needs to keep you busy. Busy working, busy consuming, busy maintaining a lifestyle that prevents you from ever stepping back and reevaluating your position. Because as long as you stay in that cycle, you never build the leverage needed to move beyond it. But once you step outside that cycle, even slightly, everything becomes clearer. You start to see opportunities differently. You start to recognize patterns. You start to understand how money flows and where it accumulates. And once you see that, you can align yourself with it. You can position yourself in places where value is created, instead of constantly chasing it after the fact. And that's one of the most important shifts you can make. Moving from chasing to positioning. Because chasing is reactive. Positioning is strategic. Chasing keeps you behind. Positioning puts you ahead. And once you're ahead, the system starts working in your favor. Not because it changed, but because you did. Because you're no longer interacting with it the same way. You're no longer just another participant. You're someone who understands how to navigate it. And that understanding compounds just like assets do. It improves your decisions. It sharpens your instincts. It allows you to move with more clarity and less hesitation. And over time, that clarity becomes your advantage. Because while others are still trying to figure out why things aren't working, you're already positioned for what comes next. And that's ultimately what this comes down to. Not escaping the system completely, but understanding it well enough to move beyond its limitations, to operate within it, without being controlled by it, to benefit from it, without being dependent on it. And that's a different way of living entirely, because now you're not just reacting to circumstances. You're shaping them. You're not just following a path. You're choosing one. And that choice is what determines everything that follows. Because once you understand the rules, the game stops feeling random. It becomes predictable. It becomes navigable. It becomes something you can actually win. And from this point forward, that outcome isn't determined by what you've been told. It's determined by how you choose to move. Because the system has always worked this way. The difference now is that you finally see it. And once you see it, you can never go back to playing blindly again.